Happy New Year, everyone. I hope all of you have an amazing 2025 ahead of you. I'm Mariana. This is Impression Blend, and as I always do in the beginning of the year, it is time for me to round up my favorites. Today, we're talking about the best TV shows of the year, the ones I binged and couldn't get enough of, the ones I loved the most. And this was a challenging list to narrow down. There were quite a few great series to pick from, but here are my top 5 series I just could not stop watching. At number 5, I have a show I actually didn't think I would like all that much, but it really ended up surprising me, and that is The Penguin. Look, I'm not really into this type of crime drama that revolves around mafia, mobsters, crime bosses. It's usually not my thing, but The Penguin was something I really enjoyed. It's the characters and the performances that really made this stand out for me. The spin-off sequel to the Matt Reeves version of The Batman, which was one of my favorite movies of 2022, is following Oz Cobb, aka The Penguin, and his rise to power in Gotham City's criminal underworld. Things get messy really quickly, as you can imagine, and we get to find out just how far the characters are willing to go to get what they want. Colin Farrell reprises his role as the Penguin, and he is fantastic. You really forget it's him behind all that makeup. He completely transforms and embodies this character. He is fascinating to watch. Sometimes you hate him, sometimes you can't help rooting for him. He will surprise you, he will disappoint you. There are so many layers to him, and this is how you write an interesting villain. But Kristen Milioti as Sophia, known as the Hangman, almost stole the show for me. Again, such a well-written and well-acted, layered character who makes you feel conflicted and you can't take your eyes off her. Sophia's backstory episode was probably my favorite episode of the entire series, and I don't think I'm alone in that. It was such a great story within a story episode that really makes you look at things differently. And the overall arc that she has in the series, brilliant. And then on top of all that, you have the cinematography and the tone, the high stakes drama, the dark humor, the surprisingly strong emotional element. This series expands the world of the Batman in a captivating way, and it actually made me excited about what other stories could be told within it, which hasn't happened to me in a long time when it comes to comic book related things. I hope they continue expanding it, and I would love to see a second season happen. At number 4, I have a series that I binged in one day, which is not something I normally do, but I could not look away, and I also don't ever want to see that again because it was a dark and difficult watch. I'm talking about Baby Reindeer, and if you haven't seen it, I obviously highly recommend it, but also brace yourself. Baby Reindeer is an autobiographical drama written by and starring Richard Gadd. It's a story of a struggling comedian, Donnie, whose act of kindness towards a vulnerable woman sparks a suffocating, terrifying obsession. This situation also brings up Donnie's complicated and traumatic past. Don't assume that this is your basic stalker story, which is an easy conclusion to come to based on the premise and the marketing. This series has so much more to offer. As an autobiographical series, it's an incredibly raw and vulnerable story, and I absolutely cannot imagine how Richard Gadd managed to go through the emotional truth of his past experiences over and over again while making this series. But what I really appreciated is the fact that Baby Reindeer doesn't shy away from the messiness of the situation, from all of the complicated and conflicting feelings. It tells this highly disturbing and even tragic story in a very human way. When I say that I was glued to the screen, I don't want you to think that this was just because of how messed up the story was. That was a part of it, of course, because as you're watching, you want to know where all of this is going and how far things are are going to escalate. But just as important is this strong emotional connection between the lead character and the viewer that you feel right away, even though he doesn't come off as the most likable guy. And also the way you view the stalker character, Martha. It's all very nuanced and complex because trauma isn't something neat you can put in a box. And while the show is also often frustrating to watch, you understand why the lead character is the way he is. Excellent performances as well, which really brings so much honesty and humanity to these characters. All right, in my number 3 spot, I actually have something a lot more fun and something that I just found really enjoyable throughout, even though technically the setup is pretty dark. I'm talking about season 1 of Fallout, and I cannot wait for season 2. Although it's based on the famous video game franchise of the same name, the TV series is following a new character, Lucy, so you don't need to do any kind of homework going into this show. About 200 years after a nuclear apocalypse, people have to live in underground bunkers to protect themselves. However, somehow, some people have managed to survive on the surface, and after an unexpected series of events, Lucy must venture into the wasteland to look for her father. Now, I knew this was going to be for me because I cannot resist a post-apocalyptic setup, and on top of that, it's an action-adventure drama, and we have a retro-futuristic thing going on. Fallout had my name written all over it. But even considering all that, I did not expect the show to be as much fun as it ended up being. They absolutely nailed this playful tone that really offsets the depressing, if you think about it, setup, but they didn't go too far into that, which would have made all of this into a complete joke. The humor and the personalities of these characters really work within how weird this world is and how weird its creatures are, and those memorable personalities and the world building are the biggest reasons why the show really stuck with me. Also, I'm so glad they did not make it look bland. So many post-apocalyptic settings look bland on screen, and Fallout is the complete opposite of that. It's colorful, it's vibrant, it's strange. I loved the look and feel of the series, and the retro soundtrack is just the cherry on top. Plus, you can tell the cast is having so much fun with their characters. Ella Purnell, Walton Goggins, Kyle MacLachlan, they're all great, and I need them back on my screen. Genuinely can't wait to find out more about their characters and about the way this crazy world works. And speaking of people living underground, the runner-up to my favorite series of 2024 is season 2 of Silo. I really enjoyed the first season of Silo, and I don't think I ever talked about it on my channel, which is an oversight on my part, but season 2 takes everything to the next level. If you don't know what this is about, it's set in a dystopian future where the outside is uninhabitable, it's completely toxic, and what's left of humanity exists in a giant silo that goes deep underground. 10,000 people live in this silo in a very structured society, and they are bound by strict rules and regulations. If you've seen season 1, you know things get more complicated, a lot of questions come up, and season 2 builds really well on top of what we've learned in season 1. We get great new characters, we learn more about the characters we've already met, we get some answers, some pretty insane reveals and twists, we get new questions, and the drama that unfolds combined with what's going on with the power structure within this society is excellent. Now, I know that as of the time I'm filming this, there are still 2 episodes left. This season is not done airing, so you might be wondering how I'm placing a show so high on my list without knowing how the season ends. But here's the thing, I was lucky enough to watch the final episodes because critics get screeners, and while I'm not allowed to talk about these 2 episodes specifically until they air, I can confirm that the the entire season is amazing. I was a little concerned at first because it's immediately clear the season is planning to split the screen time between Juliet, our protagonist, and the lovely Rebecca Ferguson, and Bernard, played by Tim Robbins, along with the rest of the silo. Sometimes a split like that can result in one storyline being noticeably more interesting than the other, but that is not the case here because both are fascinating and both reveal different aspects of the mysterious world this series is set in. Solo, played by Steve Zahn, is an amazing addition to the story and a very unpredictable character. Bernard, being almost a co-lead this season because he has a much bigger role, is fantastic. He is such an interesting antagonist. And the fact that Juliet and Bernard are not as at odds with each other as they think, but only the audience knows this, is a really cool thing to watch unfold. But my favorite series of the year, the show that completely blew me away and exceeded all of my sky-high expectations because of all of the hype surrounding it, is Shogun. Of course it's Shogun. I don't think it's possible to overhype this series because it's actually that great. Based on the historical novel of the same name, Shogun is set in Japan in the year 1600 and follows two ambitious men from two very different worlds. The cunning Lord Toranaga, who is at odds with some very dangerous political rivals, and John Blackthorne, a risk-taking English sailor who ends up shipwrecked in Japan. The series is full of amazing, intelligent characters, difficult choices, political maneuvering, and unexpected turns. Of course, a lot of it has to do with the clash of cultures between East and West, and that's a captivating theme on its own, but it's the intricate narrative and the complex character motivations that make this into one of the best series I've ever watched. I'm going to be real with you. I did not take the mess that House of the Dragon turned into this year very well. If you've seen my episode breakdowns, you already know how frustrated I was with season 2, and the way Shogun filled that void in my soul, giving me all of the morally gray characters and political scheming I was missing in my life, was just exactly what I needed. Based on the marketing and the first episode of the show, you might assume this is just an action-packed series full of battles, which is partly why I only caught up on it at the end of the year, and I was so pleasantly surprised to see that that's not the case here. It's all about scheming and making moves, all about people who grow, change, and slowly reveal their true nature, which is something I love watching. I know I keep bringing up characters, but they're genuinely amazing, which is complemented by the excellent performances across the board. Toranaga, in particular, played by Hiroyuki Sanada, is one of the most complex and intriguing characters I've seen in a very long time. Plus, the supporting cast all feel like fully fleshed out characters you understand whether you like them or not as people. They're not just there to frame the leads. Shogun is about honor, loyalty, respect, purpose, destiny, and personal transformation. The way it presents the world of that time is detailed and immersive. It's an incredibly well-written and well-made series, and I loved every minute of it. But what are your favorite series of 2024, and what series are you looking forward to the most in 2025? Let me know in the comments. And for more of my 2024 favorites, check out one of these videos next.